So, Rich, thank you for coming back.
Thanks, Amanda.
What were you looking for in a story when you were thinking about what kind of story to bring this time?
The reason I thought of this story was just a conversation that I was having with somebody about how 2025's word of the year was parasocial.
Parasocial.
And that made me think of this movie, which is a textbook example of the dangers of somebody believing that a one-sided relationship is actually a two-way friendship.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is the show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. My name is Amanda Stevens. I messed up my own script again.
Leave this in the edit.
I will. This is not a spoiler-free show, which is really important. We were just talking about that before. So bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle movies, books, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read or watch. In today's case, I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, again. And today, as you heard in the intro, we have returning guest, Rich Mattias. Welcome back, Rich.
How you doing, Amanda?
Doing well. I'm doing better now that I remembered my whole intro script.
Nice. You got it this time.
Yeah. Sometimes, when you get started, you just kind of like blue screen. That's like, I do it so often that you would think it's on autopilot, but I think it's exactly because it's on autopilot that, like, if anything interrupts my flow at all.
Sometimes it takes a while to reboot. I get it.
In this case, I think I was like putting down my pen and I was like, oh, and I forgot where I was. Anyway, you've been on one or two times. Is there anything that you would like to say to introduce yourself for anyone who might have missed one of your previous episodes?
Hi, everybody.
All right. Well, in that case, what story have you brought for us to talk about today?
The movie Perfect Blue, which is an animated film that came out in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
From Satoshi Kon, the director, the famous Japanese animated director.
Mm-hmm. Gone in his prime. What a shame. But
Mid-40s.
I think very well known in the Western Hemisphere for Paprika, I feel like was one of his breakout movies. So if you've heard about that, this is another one of his films. I'm really excited to talk about this because I talked about Kon's work in a college class where we were discussing the idea that a lot of his works, which are all animated, sort of exist as like two sides of a coin.
Sure.
Where he explores one idea, one from like a bright side and one is like a dark reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bright side of this idea, like your relationship with like a superstar or something, is a movie called Millennium Actress, which is one of my favorite movies.
Right. I've never seen it, but I hear it's fantastic.
I really love it. And so I'm really excited to then again talk about Perfect Blue, which is that same idea, but on the dark side of that kind of coin. So is there anything that you think we should know about this movie before we discuss it?
I would say if you plan to watch this movie, you should be aware that this movie requires some trigger warnings. There are some scenes of graphic violence and assault that you should know going in. So if that would bother you, perhaps skip over those scenes or take a pass on this movie. But the movie is, I think, just a great work of art. Yeah.
And this is another reminder that animation does not equal for children. Especially when we talk about overseas animated films, meaning films basically anywhere outside of North America.
Sure. I was going to touch on that later when you say when you first encountered this movie. But
that
exact point I'll
return to
mention
that.
It. Yeah, this was a big reason why the world of animation kind of opened up to me. Like, the world is bigger than The Lion King, right?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to talk about that. Okay, but let's predicate that on the summary of Perfect Blue. Rich, can you please?
Sure. This movie follows a pop idol. Her name is Mima, and she is, as you can imagine, in any pop, K-pop, J-pop group, they all wear the similar costumes and they all dance and they're all great singers, and this is how she starts, but she's going to leave that career behind in order to pursue a career as acting. But that transition is very difficult for her, and she is forced into bit roles or roles that force her to be far more sexual than she would like. But she sees that as the price of achieving fame and things like that. However, The change is difficult for her, and it triggers a sort of psychological unraveling that happens throughout the course of the movie, which is also encouraged by other people around her who may not have her best interests at heart, including over-obsessive fans or movie producers and directors who just want her to show skin as opposed to show her abilities as an actress and these kinds of things. So
they're kind of like trying to create their own Black Swan moment over here.
Well,
like, give yourself to the
interestingly,
screen.
Some people do believe that the Black Swan movie did take some ideas from this, maybe inspired by Aronofsky would say otherwise, but but there are some similarities about just a person questioning their reality, not understanding, because again, Kon, as you mentioned earlier, two sides of a coin. He does two sides of a coin within the movie, because while you're watching it, you can't really know for sure if what she's experiencing is a reality or a hallucination, because she is unraveling. As her life unravels, so too is her concept of who's real, who's not. There's chunks of time missing. She wakes up in her bed sometimes and doesn't remember how she got there, things like that. So there is a sense where even the audience is unsure whether to trust the protagonist's state of mind.
Okay. So this is sort of like the film exploring this as she gets further into her film career. How does it end? Like, where does it wrap up? And we can put a little, like, you were a little bit nervous to say this at the beginning because you want to encourage people to watch the movie. So maybe skip ahead 1 minute or two if you don't want to hear this.
Yeah, these are spoilers. But throughout the film, you have scenes of her trying to act, followed by just grotesque moments of violence as people around her start getting killed. Movie producers, fellow actors, photographers, things like that. And then the climax of the film is, it's a little difficult to explain, but I guess the one character in the story that is considered her most stalwart ally, as she was her manager since the beginning when she was a pop singer, is the murderer. And it was because she was so obsessed with her client that she believed that she herself had become her, like taken on her identity, and also hated the fact that she was taking this path that was sullying her perfect image as a pop idol. And so she saw her client's image destroyed as she starts taking these more and more, I guess, adult roles as opposed to the clean-cut pop role. It was upsetting her, and so she was secretly murdering people, and also assuming her identity, wearing her clothing, all these things. And so it ends in a kind of a high-stakes chase sequence that ends in a near-death experience.
Wow.
It's good.
That was it. That was a really good way to end it, too. Now I need to know for whom. Okay, but I won't make you answer that question because now I want to watch it.
Yeah, definitely worth watching.
Oh, God. This is very interesting. So I see immediately what you were talking about with like this idea of parasocial. That was a dictionary's website. It does fit really well with this idea of, because I feel this way about you, you must feel this way about me. Right.
Right. And again, a lot of these public figures, and they trade on parasocialism as a way to commodify their themselves in order to profit. So.
And they always have.
Of course, yeah. The idea of being close to your fans and their connections, particularly we're living in Asia, so we are in the mecca of pop idolism, And so the idea of armies and things like that is something that I've never quite understood. I'm not into this world, but the movie definitely pulled me in with this idea. So this movie came out in 94, I want to say. So this predated fan idoldom on the internet. Right, so in this movie, you have scenes where there's websites where you have Mima's activities and interests charted on this website in a way that seemed quite creepy. Little did we know that in 20 years that would be the most vanilla thing, but way worse. Millions of sites, Reddit, subreddits, YouTube fan analyses. Like, have you websites that make money on spotting famous people, things like that, paparazzi. Just it's exploded, and so this movie was a real kind of predecessor, ahead of its time.
That's the interesting thing too. Is like I like a lot of Kon's work, but also a lot of these movies that came out around that time, because I was also talking about kind of books from the 90s where people were like predicting what you would be able to do with the internet. And a lot of these books also like inspired big media moguls today, including like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. One of them is Snow Crash. It's like that kind of question of like, did you kind of predict this, or did we see this and realize that we could do it with that technology too, right? That who came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But before I get even more off track talking about this. Why don't you tell me?
Not at all.
You mentioned originally that this story, as an animated one, kind of like opened your mindset about like how big the world of animation could be. So how did you first encounter this story? How did you find Perfect Blue? And like at what age were you? Is my like
Maybe
hitting question in that.
I want to say 13 or 14, something like that.
Wow.
So this movie comes out in the same year, 1994.
Yeah.
So this movie comes out in the same year as like The Lion King.
Or
If
around that
you're
time.
listening and you're unfamiliar with media in the United States, it's just Disneyfied.
Yeah.
Most of the animation is very different today, where you have all of the world's animated media content at your fingertip through media and subscription. At that time, at least when I was a kid, all the animation that was available was television cartoons and Disney movies. So
Yeah.
Disney movies are great, of course, but if anybody's seen them, you know that they're limited in scope and the ability of the stories they can tell, and their target audience is children.
Yeah.
So at the time I saw Perfect Blue, I was also introduced to movies like Akira and Ninja Scroll and Princess Mononoke. And these
Yeah.
movies all have incredible amounts of like violence
Yeah.
and war and tackle thoughts of
Really
grief and
heavy
loss.
themes.
Heavy, mature themes that are usually reserved for high-end dramas.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head growing up as a young kid, I just didn't see animation as a space where that kind of expression could exist. And then all of a sudden I see this slew of films. I'm like, oh, there's a whole other world of animation going on. And again, I'm so happy that in today's world, everybody has access to such this high quality, nuanced media. At we're similar ages, right? So I think if you were to find things like that when you were younger, it was kind of gate kept by what was on TV or just a Blockbuster video. It was video
Or also
rentals,
like
whatever they had.
what time it was played on TV.
Exactly.
That's what I remember is when I was
Exactly.
a kid, I think like Toonami came out, but then there was like a Toonami like late night.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I wanted to watch those, I'd have to find a way to sneak out to the TV, which is in our living room, which my parents could hear down the hallway, and like watch.
It was an operation.
It was a whole thing. But yeah, I kind of had a similar experience when I was young, finding one of those films tackling like bigger themes than I had seen explored in like the cartoons that had been pitched to me by that time in my life.
It's really hard to clearly state how much of a departure it is from what we had. Again, this movie is so
It's definitely
absurdly violent and
made
dark and
for
horrific.
adults.
It's a psychological horror drama. It really is. Using the American rating system would easily be an R.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
a hard R. Just because it is so violent and shocking and
Yes.
surprising.
I think a lot of people can point to that experience when you see your first. There's something to be said for reading a book, but I feel like you have a little bit more of unorganic gatekeeping there because you have to figure out how to read to that level, right?
Right.
But I think a lot of people who grew up with the ability to watch movies or TV shows, you remember the first one that broke with your expectations for what was allowed in a movie.
Yeah, this was one of them for
And like,
sure.
yeah, where it's either like, oh, they just died. Like, oh, they're not coming back,
Yes.
for example. Or like, oh, they said a bad word and they're going to keep doing it. Like, whatever that was for you. But getting back towards like the meaning, do you think that kind of like expanding your worldview is what made this so meaningful to you? Or was there something else in that as well?
Besides the fact that it is just an excellent movie by itself, yeah, it was. It's always excited, as you said, to be exposed to any kind of idea or film or media that you didn't know really existed. But just as a larger idea, the fact that this movie's 30 years old, but it's maybe more relevant now than it was then, because the world we live in is exactly the thing that this movie talks about, which is the idea that we are closer to people who are public figures than we really are.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of influencers, the
It's sort of like you have more access to people's personal lives than you ever did before, right?
Yeah, right.
Because as a point of comparison from following like a boy band in the 90s would be that like you're buying magazines, you're watching TV interviews, you're listening to radio interviews, and there were big like paparazzi. And so some of the closest that you could follow these people, like the access you had to their lives, was through mostly like their kind of chosen public outlets and also what could be published in a magazine. So paparazzi following them around, which is still very invasive, not to like undermine that, but you still have to rely on like one person physically being there. Versus today, these people can now send you like direct videos from inside their house and in their daily lives. You also have like access to many more voices that are commenting on what these people are doing. So if I were following that same band today, I could follow 6 to 12 or more like blogs just on discourse on every single thing every time this person walks out the door, like breaking down every little bit. And I think the illusion of a close relationship matching how much you know about a person, like that distance has closed so much compared to what it was when this film came out, that the message feels like it's gotten louder, if that makes sense.
It does. Like, the idea of parasocial is just you have this idea that you're closer to somebody than you really are. You have these days influencers like Kai Cenat or I Show Speed. These guys that have 100,000 people sitting in on a stream with them for hours. Where to spend several hours with a person you don't know online and chatting, and I say this with air quotes, is just, it's amazing. It's obviously a new form of media and interaction, but there's no way that a young person, because a lot of these people's audience is what? They're kids or teens. There's no way you can do that and not feel as if you're closer to this person than you are in reality. Right? And that is being commodified. They know that. They know that to make you feel as if they're a friend is a way that you will continue coming and subscribing and buying the merch. But as a result of that, you also have people misunderstanding what boundaries are in social situations, right? And going back to Perfect Blue, 2 of the primary characters is the extreme end of that scale.
Yeah. Well, I think I know the last time that I was talking about parasocial relationships, it was on my news show. But Hannah and I were discussing how, to some degree, like, people have always had parasocial relationships, and you can have like healthier parasocial relationships, right? Like, I have these podcasters that I like to listen to every week. I have taken on some of their sayings and stuff because I'm listening to them every week, right?
That's a good clarification.
I also know, like,
but you
if I were to meet them, I know more about them than they know about me. And to some extent, that's weird.
Yes.
And they know that also. And then there's also that kind of like break when it's really what you described in the movie, where you're like, because I know so much about you, we're really close, right?
Right. And then it leads closer into getting upset when maybe a person does something publicly that you wouldn't expect of that person, which again is born from a one-way relationship. You don't know this person, but you have an idea of what they should be. And when they don't meet that expectation, the more extreme of these people might act or be upset in a way, like leave angry rants on social media or on comment threads about how this person shouldn't have done that, or that's not their kind of behavior. And
they're betraying their ideals, they're betraying their fans.
Exactly. There's a bit of ownership involved, of feeling like you own a piece of this person, which just is not the case in any healthy relationship of any kind.
Yeah, a really good point. That idea of ownership, is that what you feel like a bigger message that other people could get from this story? Is like a warning that knowing a lot about someone doesn't entitle you to like ownership over their lives or their identity or anything like that.
I don't think you can watch this movie and not take that message away about just, there is an ugliness that, I mean, Kon is so clear on top of his kind of topics of the damage that fame and the price of fame might do on one's mental health, which is a whole other subject, at least with the parasocial aspect. He definitely makes it clear. It's a very scathing critique, basically, of pop fandom. And these days, people trade on that. If you talk about idols today who don't want to be in relationships, or if they're in a relationship, they have to hide it because their primary relationship is with their fan, right? And part of that is entertaining the fantasy that a fan could be entertaining a relationship in their mind with this idol of their choice. And that is, to me, disturbing.
Kind of crossing a line.
It is.
I agree.
And so this movie very much makes it clear that there are unhealthy aspects to one-sided fandom.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. But before we go, if you could give Perfect Blue a one-phrase subtitle of your own, what would you say?
I guess I would say, I don't know, make sure your relationships are two-way streets.
Should be two-way streets.
Should be two-way streets. And if not, watch your back, don't get stabbed.
Could I pitch also, like, just the dangers of parasocialism?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Absolutely. I didn't want to harp too much on the word, but absolutely, that is the key aspect of the film, and just knowing your boundaries with other people.
Know your boundaries. I almost want to go back to that, but anyway, Rich, thanks so much for coming in. I've had a lot of fun talking about this. I really love these movies. I cannot encourage people enough to go watch them.
Great movie. Again, bit of a trigger warning, but this one's a work of art, so I strongly recommend everyone to watch it. Yeah. And thank you to all of you listeners out there, hopefully not in a dangerous parasocial way. Thank you for listening to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Amanda Stevens, here with my guest, Rich Mattias.
And you were listening to Tales of Our Time, where today we were discussing the show Perfect Blue, The Dangers of Parasocialism, a tale of our time. And we'll see you next time.